Hello, welcome to this video. My name's Tim Shoebridge. Now, quite a long time ago, I did a video about the Moog Voyager, this rather highly illuminated and I think rather wonderful instrument behind me here. It was really kind of a tribute to the Voyager rather than a review of it. I've done other videos about this synth as well. Now, as part of my kind of doing that tribute to the Voyager, I ended up trawling through the internet, which is something I really don't recommend doing. Trawling through the internet and looking for people's comments about this synth, going back like 20 years to when it was first announced and released. And I went through hundreds and hundreds of comments trying to get a feel for public opinion about the Voyager. Now, I do go into all of this in my original video. I'm not going to go into it again here. But, you know, the bottom line is the biggest, I think, criticism leveled at the Voyager was that it didn't sound like its predecessor, the Mini Moog Model D. And one of the main reasons people said it didn't sound like the predecessor was because of its buzziness. It wasn't as buzzy and bright as a Mini Moog Model D, and that's what this video is about buzziness, the business of buzziness. So I'm going to be talking about the Voyager. I'm going to be talking about that one behind me and the one I've got in front of me here, which is a Voyager RME. Now, when it comes to the Voyager and the disappointment by the public over the sound of it, there was a modification that became quite famous at the time, and it was called the slew rate mod, the slew rate modification. So what I want to do in this video is just talk about that modification a little bit. I'm not an electronics engineer, I can't tell you the ins and outs of it, but I'll try and describe sort of like basically what it's about. And then I'm going to demonstrate it to you because my Voyager XL behind me is an original Voyager. It doesn't have any modifications at all, whereas my Voyager RME in front of me here has got that slew rate mod in it. So I thought it might be interesting to try a little comparison between these two Voyagers. Let's look at the waveforms and see what they look like on an oscilloscope, and let's see if we can hear the difference between them. That's what's coming up in this video. I do hope it is of some interest to you and a little bit of entertainment. As always, thank you very, very much for watching. So what is this slew rate mod? Now, to understand that, we have to understand what the term slew rate means. Now, in electronics terms, slew rate has a specific meaning. I'll show you the definition of it up on the screen right now. In electronics, slew rate is defined as the change in voltage or current or any other electrical quantity per unit of time. Now, if I show you a typical waveform, a basic waveform that an analog oscillator will generate, let's look at a sawtooth. You'll see there we've got this abrupt and instantaneous jump up in voltage, and then the voltage decreases over time. Kind of linear, it might not be linear, it might be a bit of a curve going on there, but there is a decrease in voltage, followed by another jump in voltage and another decrease in voltage. Now, those jumps in voltage, they might look instantaneous, but they're not actually instantaneous. They do take a fraction of a second to occur. And obviously how quickly the electrical components in an analog oscillator can make the voltage jump will mean, you know, that the waveform that we hear, the audible frequency waveforms that we hear from an oscillator, are going to have more and more harmonic content, because it's those instantaneous changes in voltage that actually give harmonic content to the waveform, and that's what our ears and our brains interpret as buzzy sounding. So I just want to show you here, I've written a little bit of software that kind of emulates what slew rate does to a waveform. So here we're starting off with an instantaneous jump in waveform with this sawtooth, but as I reduce the slider here, you'll see that I'm actually slowing down the slew rate. I'm actually sort of emulating what would happen if some really sort of like low-grade components were being used in an analog oscillator to generate this sawtooth. And the slower and slower and slower that slew rate becomes, you'll see that the more rounded and smooth the waveform becomes, it actually kind of reverts to a sine wave. So you can see how slew rate is affecting the amount of harmonics that are in a waveform, which then we interpret as buzziness, brightness, hardness, however you want to describe it. Now, whereas this video so far has been safe and predictable and a little bit boring, it's about to change. We're about to go down a rabbit hole of madness, of chaos, where families will be ripped apart, lifelong friendships will be destroyed, where chaos exists, where conspiracy theorists will conspire their theories. We're going to go crazy here, because I'm about to show you the difference between my two Voyagers, the waveforms and what they sound like. Don't worry, no one's going to go mad. The only person going mad here is me with this whole subject. What I'm going to do is show you the waveforms using this lovely little device here. Really very, very handy little thing. It's the little Korg oscilloscope. It's great for so many things, but for actual sort of like close scrutiny of waveforms, it's probably not the best choice. As you'll see as we go, you can see the differences in the waveforms on here, but it's not very, very clear. So I'm going to be using that. Let's set it up and switch it on. Now the first waveforms you're going to hear are going to be the Voyager RME. So that is with the slew rate mod. Slew rate mod coming up, just playing a sawtooth, filter wide open, no modulation, as it will be with that Voyager XL as well. So here we go. This is the Voyager RME. There you go. And while that's in your memory, let's play the Voyager XL with no slew rate mod. And because it's impossible to sort of compare without sort of like alternating the waveforms quite quickly in your ears, let's do that. First, RME, XL, RME, XL, RME, XL, RME, XL, RME, XL, RME, there are subtle differences. They're very, very subtle. To my ears, they're incredibly subtle. That's because I'm not as young as I used to be, and when I was 17 years old, I went to a Jethro Tull concert, and after that concert, which was brilliant, by the way, I was deaf for 3 days running, going to school, sitting at the back of the class, couldn't hear what anyone was saying, just nodding every now and again. That was me back a long time ago in the 80s, and I've suffered from it ever since. I've got a bit of tinnitus in my right ear that's louder than the left, and I don't hear high frequencies brilliantly. So I'm not the best person to be doing this video about these little sort of like differences in waveforms. So maybe to you they're as clear as day, and maybe to you they are not. I'm going to show you just a few little sort of like comments I found about this slew rate mod that made me laugh. I'll do that in a second, but let's just carry on with the analysis first. I know it's very, very difficult to sort of hear the differences very, very clearly. They are subtle. The best way to see what's going on is to actually look at some spectrum analysis, frequency spectrum analysis. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So you're going to hear both of the synthesizers playing together, so it's going to sound a bit jumbled up. There's a very slight tuning differences between them across the octaves, so that bear that in mind. But it's not about the sound this time, it's about what you see on the screen with the different spectrums. So if you concentrate on the high frequencies in those frequency spectrums, you can see there's a definite difference in the high frequency content of the slew rate modded Voyager RME versus the non-modded Voyager XL. There is a difference. There is more high frequency content in the RME. But that made me start to think to myself, well, can I not just EQ the Voyager XL and get a similar effect? Is the high frequency content completely missing with the XL, so EQing it will make no difference, or can I EQ it? Let's have a go at that. Let's see what happens. So am I going mad here, or can you just sort of like EQ a little bit the original Voyager XL signal and get the same effect as the slew rate mod? In fact, even more of an exaggerated high frequency content output than the slew rate mod can. Is that really it, or am I going mad? I don't know.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad here.
So I can't really let this video go by without showing you a few quotes from the internet, because, you know, it's with all of these things. Is one synth better than another synth? Is one synth with a modification better than another synth? It's all down to personal opinion and, of course, what we hear. And we've all got different ears, we've all got different brains, we're all different, and that's great. But let me just show you a few quotes here. The first one I'm going to show you is actually the eBay advert, the guy that was selling this RME with its Lintronics slew rate mod in it. This is what he says in the description. This is not why I bought it. I wanted to buy one that had the slew rate mod in it. I was in the market for an RME anyway, so for me it was a win-win. But anyway, this is what he says, and I've got it there in bold. If you haven't heard the Voyager with the slew rate mod, it's a totally different synth compared to the factory version. And there's a few people kind of, you know, sort of like with that mantra on the internet. And there's when you sort of like trawl through the forums, there are a few people that have got the mod that are very, very happy with it and are singing its praises. I'll show you another comment here. This is a more detailed one. I just got my Voyager back from modification, and I have to say that the slew rate mod has made a big difference. On first glance, it seems subtle, which is why I think nobody has yet been convinced by any waveform clips. But if you listen on decent monitoring, you can really hear the extended tops, more air in the sounds, more hair and texture, and better definition in the bass, and more enhanced transient response. This is a gentleman or lady, a gentleman I believe, with much, much, much better hearing than me, and much, much better monitoring, I think, because I can't hear those kinds of subtleties. Now, obviously, I've just been playing you basic waveforms, and the idea is that this slew rate mod makes a real difference in proper patches where you've got some filter sweeps going on and high resonance and stuff like that. And there is one particular factory preset on the Voyager which has been used as a kind of way of trying to sort of like hear the difference between the slew rate mod and no mod. So I'm going to play you that now because I happen to have that factory preset on both of my synths here. So it's a good test, isn't it? It's a real world preset. We should hear a real difference. Here it comes now. There is a difference. It's a subtle difference. Does it make any difference? I don't know. If you were to be playing that in a song, would you really hear that there's a difference? It's such a, you know, it's such a contentious subject here. I don't think you would really, would you? I don't know. Anyway, but how about comparing the slew rate modded Voyager to the non-modded XL, but if I do the little EQ trick, that's what I'll play you now. Seems to me with EQ you can make the synth sounds as different as you want. Of course you can. You can highlight and suppress whatever frequency ranges you like. So there we go. What can I say? How can I conclude? Conclusions? Are there any conclusions? I think the only real conclusion that I can come up with is that I need to go and have my ears tested. No, other than that, it is subjective. It's a subtle difference, even, you know, with people younger than me that got better ears than me. It's a subtle difference, but it is there. What what I'd like to do is to be able to compare my Voyager XL and Voyager RME against a real Mini Moog Model D. I don't have one, but I have, from an audio perspective, probably the next best thing, and I apologize, I'm going to use the B word right now, but this is, from an audio point of view, the next best thing. It's the Behringer Model D. I have friends that have both real vintage Model Ds as well as Beringer, and I trust their opinion, and their opinion says that it's very, very, very close. So that's what I'm going to do now, just show you a little comparison with the Model D I've got here versus the two Voyagers. In fact, I'm just going to show you, just jump straight to the frequency spectrum analysis point, so you can actually see how close the slew rate mod on the Voyager gets to the frequency spectrum of a cloned Model D. It's pretty damn close.